Hello, welcome to the Hope, Health, and Healing podcast. I am Michelle Hannah Fields, and I will be your host for episode 30, where I am joined by one of my very best friends, Elicia Gordy, and her sister, Brandi Pugh. On this episode, which is part one of a two-part series, Elicia and Brandi share how they grew up in the same house, but they have different perspectives on what their childhood was like. They also both share their journey of faith, how they came to know the Lord, and what it has looked like for them. Brandi also shares her journey through addiction and what the healing process has looked like for her. Elicia shares a story of one time when Brandi was in addiction and how she heard that someone in Brandi's house had passed away. Elicia's heart was stirred, thinking that it was Brandi, but she later found out that Brandi was okay, but she was in trouble. Elicia also talks about how she came to the aid of Brandi's kids and took care of them while she was in recovery. God will put you in the exact place you need to be to help someone else. So sit back with a cup of coffee or favorite beverage of your choice and allow Elicia and Brandi's stories to inspire you today. All right, so I am joined by my best friend Elicia Gordy and her sister Brandi Pugh. So I always like to start with how I know people. So Elicia and I met in 2010 at the church that I attended at the time, and it was actually under not the best of circumstances, but it was your grandfather passing away. Mm-hmm. And I sang at his funeral, and Brother Jim Harris, and that's when we met. And then you started coming to the church, and we just developed a huge friendship and just have been best friends ever since. And then I met Brandi not too long after that. So thank y'all for joining me today and sharing part of your story. Y'all have a lot of story to share. So we're going to just get started today. So tell me a little bit, either one of y'all can go, just tell me a little bit about just who you are. And if somebody said, who is Elicia or who is Brandi, what would you tell them?
Well, here very recently I have finally started to live my life out loud, and I introduced myself as Brandi, a recovering addict of 15 years, anytime I'm talking to anybody. So there's a whole story behind that, but I am a recovering addict of 15 years, and unfortunately I think you met her during that time. Mm-hmm. of that happening. So yeah.
Yeah. Who are you, Elicia? If you had to give me your elevator speech.
But she's a mama.
Yeah.
Great mama.
Yeah.
And she's a wonderful wife, and she's the best sister, and she's become my best friend this year.
And she's a grandmama.
Some tissues.
And she's a grandmother.
And she's all great things. You're not just recovering.
I know.
Okay. So yeah, I'm a mama. And I've actually really tried recently to, not allow that to be the only label on my life, because I know the Lord has much, a purpose for me even outside of that. But just a mom, a health coach, which I love and I'm super passionate about. Mm-hmm. And basically for the last 7 years of my life, that's all I've done, is be a mom and be a health coach. But yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you're also an artist.
Yeah.
A beautiful artist. And, I love watching the both of you and seeing where God's brought you from, because I saw both of you at very low points in life and just have really seen God move. So, Brandi, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the first time I met you, you had gotten out of recovery, and it was around Christmas time. Mm-hmm. And I was having Elicia and her family over for lunch. My mom and my friend Sue was coming over for lunch, and you came to church that morning.
Mm-hmm. I do remember that.
And Elicia said, Brandi's here. And I said, well, tell her to come to my house. And you came to my house, and you and I sat in the kitchen and talked that day, and everybody else was in the dining room. Yeah. And afterwards, I told Elicia, I just see something special in Brandi. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad to see that you are continuing on that path that God opened up for you.
Mm-hmm. It's been wild. I'll tell you, I won't ever forget when everything happened that actually put me there. Somebody looked at my mom and told her there's only a 7% success rate in her drug of choice. And I think about that all the time, because I am that I'm gonna get emotional. I am that 7%. And I always knew that wasn't me. And me and Lulu actually talked about this. I always knew that wasn't me. And to look back on things that I went through, to try to even fathom that that's the person that I was for 5 years is wild to me, because that's not who I am. And just to see how bad it can bring you down and just make you somebody that you are not is wild. So I very, very recently, we were just talking about this too, I came to Georgia. I live in Virginia now. I came to Georgia. My grandbaby was being born, and I had to like rush out. So it was just me. I had a 10-hour drive. I do not like being alone in my own head. I do not like feeling all my feelings and my emotions. I try everything I can to suppress that, and whatever it is to keep my mind busy. I mean, falling asleep at night, I listen to podcasts so I don't have to listen to my own head. And so driving that 10 and a half hours alone, I didn't have a choice. After almost 15 years, on that 10 and a half hour drive, there was something in me finally that healed everything that I've been waiting on. And that's only been 8 weeks, I think, on the 14th. Yeah, it's 8 weeks since that happened. And I am growing my TikTok following right now, and it is wild, and I'm sharing my story on there, and I'm getting a lot of feedback on that. And I have been telling them that it has taken me 15 years to finally heal and be able to talk about this.
Yeah, and that's so true. Anything we go through, a lot of times we suppress all that. And you know, I've shared on my podcast. I think I shared it on my podcast, but I know at places I've spoken, I shared this, that back in 2021, I was on a business coach call with. I had some private business coaching, and on that call, you know, he was digging around in some stuff and things that I had never dealt with, and things that I had suppressed. And as I was, you know, as these things were being uncovered, I was praying one day, and God said, when that happened, you put Band-Aids over it. And he said, I cannot fully heal you unless you take the Band-Aid off and you uncover that wound. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know, I put that Band-Aid on there because I didn't want people to see how hurt I was. I didn't want them to see that wound, and I didn't want to look at it either. And so I put that Band-Aid over my heart. And what I found was that when I did uncover that and allow myself to feel those things, allow, you know, God to come in, he does heal those places. And it doesn't mean that the wound, there won't be evidence of the wound, because you'll have that scar. But then what happens is you see the scar and not the wound. And the scar reminds you of God's power to bring you through it, and his healing power. And so that is, I'm glad that you had that time, even though it was probably hard and scary, and those things you don't want to deal with, you know. But at the right time, God helps you deal with those things.
Well, and I have been slowly growing my account on TikTok and doing some things on there, and I was so scared to go live. I was finally at a place to be able to go live on TikTok, and I've always had these insecurities. I've always had fears. I don't know, I think it's a lot of the way that we grew up, that was just kind of instilled in us that we didn't even realize. And so I have been carrying that my whole life. I'm 41, and I was able to go live on TikTok, and my husband kept telling me, you know, Brandi, just do it. People are looking for people like you. Just do it. And so I was absolutely terrified. I got all my stuff ready. I got my backdrop ready. I got everything, and I still couldn't go live. And so when I drove that 10 and a half hour drive to Georgia, and I just had that breakthrough, or whatever that was in that moment, I got back on Sunday, and Tuesday I went live for the first time on TikTok, and it has been amazing. Like, it has been wild, and it's just like overcoming that fear, stepping out of your comfort zone. And that's what Lulu told me, because we had it set up for her to go live with me for the first time because I was absolutely scared to death.
Yeah.
And she's like, yes, we'll do it together. And then we weren't able to because TikTok, but I just felt something in me change on that drive. And again, it's been almost 15 years, and that was just eight weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people on my lives, because I do talk about my recovery on there, and just try to be that vessel for people that that need that. And I have people sending me messages and DMing me and thanking me for just being so loud about it. And I have always been so scared, but I've been hiding behind my guilt. The guilt and shame has not allowed me to overcome that, and I am finally, almost 15 years later, proud of who I am. It took a long time.
Yeah. And you know, those things, you know, if we could go back in time and change things, we would, but at the same time, we would not be who we are today without what we've been through. All of those things help us, and what it does is now, you know, when you come across somebody who's experiencing the same thing you did, you offer them hope, and you offer them empathy that I can't offer them.
Right.
And so, you know, God uses our story, even the dark places, even the ugly places, even the hard. You know, it's Isaiah 61:3, which is one of mine and Alicia's favorite scriptures. God gives us beauty for ashes. And he also gives us the oil of joy for mourning. And, you know, that is what he does. He gives us the garment of praise for that spirit of heaviness. And, you know, those promises we can hold to. Elicia, what is a defining moment in your life that you feel like for Brandi, that she had that moment where she felt definite chains falling? Like, what is one of those moments for you?
I think of two things. You know, there's many, but I think about in 2017 being at rock bottom, you know, really just having like everything stripped from me through divorce, losing everything, losing my home to foreclosure. I share this often as I'm, you know, sharing through our health coaching community, but like when you're at rock bottom, and I was literally laying my head down at night, like crying out to the Waymaker to make a way, and I could not see a way. There was no way on this side of heaven alone. There was no way with me, like a high school dropout, no college degree, you know, single mom at this point. Like, there wasn't a way but God. And I just know at that point in my life, like working for a beautiful, you know, art ministry, who I just loved and adored my job and still do, you know, the Lord opened a new door. And it's wild, because I think sometimes we have to be at the lowest points of our life to see the door open. I think every day we pray for opportunities, or, you know, we want to be obedient and our heart is there, but, you know, the world is so loud. There's so much noise that the Lord's like opening doors left and right, and we're not even looking. And so in that point in my life, I was praying so fervently for God to open a door that I saw it open wide with the vehicle of coaching. And it set me on a new path. It changed my whole life. And so oftentimes I say I didn't find Optavia. Optavia found me, and it changed my life. So there, it set me on a new path. That was the start of really a lot of chains being broken. My story, as far as my Optavia journey, isn't necessarily of weight loss. It's of breaking off scarcity mindsets, childhood trauma, limiting mindsets, you know, really stepping in, like Brandi said, like for the first time in her life, like loving who she is, like, you know, realizing like this is who I am, rather than allowing ourselves to believe that we're the labels that the world has put on us. So for me, it was that vehicle that I know that God brought me at that time to help me step out. There's a lot I could say around that, but even just this year, this year has been a pivotal year. 2023 was very hard. And I remember going into January of this year and literally just crying out to God and saying, like, 2023 can't repeat itself. I won't make it.
Yeah.
I know that you and I, like, we choose a word of the year and have for years and years. And this year, I remember sitting in the first sermon of church, the first Sunday of the year, and Pastor Brent saying prayer changes everything. And even though I'd heard it a million times in my life, I heard it different that day. Because in my life at that point, I felt like everything needed to change. Mm-hmm. So it made perfect sense that my word of the year was prayer. Mm-hmm. And I've prayed different this year than I ever have before. Mm-hmm. And I've watched just chains fall off in so many areas. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like a lot of really incredible areas. God has really revealed so much and come through when I never thought that it was possible. Mm-hmm. And Brandi's one huge way. I mean, because she's always been my baby sister. I've always been her big sister. We always had a love for one another, but there have been a lot that had happened over the years that was just a wall. Mm-hmm. And this year, it's just like I've just watched like the layers pull back. And I think, honest to God, at 41 and 43, we know each other today for the first time in our lives. Mm-hmm. It's very special.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, God has a way of restoration, and I say he's the master restorer. You know, he's the restorer, you know, in, give me the scripture, Joel 2:26, I believe it says, I will restore the years that the locusts have eaten. Mm-hmm. And that, I believe, is what I see in y'all in this year. Is God is restoring the years the enemy stole from you. And it started in your childhood. It started, you know, in that you grew up in, and even though you were sisters, you loved each other, there was no real bond and connection there until recently.
We grew up so different. Mm-hmm. It's wild. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have a lot of the same memories and fun stuff and funny stuff that we talk about, but we also have suppressed a lot. There's a lot that we don't remember. And we both, again, for us to have grown up so different in the same household, Elicia left, when was it, 13? 12? 12. Mm-hmm. She was 12 and I was 10 at the time. And so it was hard, and you didn't really understand, you know, what was happening. But the older that we've gotten and the more we've talked about stuff, she has a completely different point of view than I do. It's wild. It's wild. And Jesse, the same. Mm-hmm. We all have different points of view. It's like we just grew up completely different. I don't know how to explain it. It's really weird. But there were a lot of things growing up that pulled us apart or almost against each other until we got older. And then we really started talking about some things, and it was just wild to think, like, things that were going on with her when she was 17, 18, 19 years old, I had no clue about. And I mean, you know, that was back in the day when we didn't have cell phones, and we weren't able to keep in contact with each other like that. So it was really difficult. And then, you know, you grow up and you start living your own life, and you get married and you have kids and you're doing your own thing, and you don't even realize, like, we felt so distant, but I don't think we ever understood why or how to even come back together. And so once we did, like she said, just the last year and a half or two is wild, because I moved to Virginia, but it's like we have gotten so much closer. Probably actually a year before I left is really when it started, and just hearing her heart and listening to things that she had to say and understanding where she was coming from on the opposite end of things really opened my heart and my mind, and it made me really sad. Like,
yeah, and I felt the same way for her, because when you're that young, I mean, I would say even at our age as adults, you know, sometimes we don't have the emotional intelligence enough to see, or we're not willing, whatever you want to call it, to see from another person's point of view. But as 10 and 12-year-old girls, we weren't able to even think that way. Like, I could only feel what I felt, and she felt hers, and like she said, there was no connection, like as far as phones. So she had a whole way of believing and hurt, and that grew, and so did I, and we never in all of our lives talked about it. And so it was wild and super sad, but also like relief. You know, it literally felt like weights and chains falling off, to realize, like, because it's a horrible feeling to feel like I love this person so much, but there's this massive wall there, and I don't know why. I mean, over the years, someone could ask, and, you know, we couldn't say we ever had a falling out or a cross word. Like, there was never anything, So, I mean, it's just wild how the Lord can just really make something so distant just become so precious and pure. And so now there's nothing I could say or not say, or her the other way around. Like, we get each other, and that's why I can truly say, like, she's my best friend, because it's weird. We've known each other our whole lives, but it's just felt that way. So this has just been a real, it's just been like a revelation for us. The last couple of years has been really special to me.
Yeah, that's so good. And, just the way that God works, but we have to be open to that. We have to allow God to work in our hearts, to open us up for that healing and that restoration. He's not going to force it on us. You have to be open and willing to go down that path. And I'm so thankful that both of you are, and you're desiring that closeness and that restoration. Elicia, talk about how you really it came to faith, and what that looked like for you, that journey.
Yeah, so I think as children we knew who Jesus was. I wouldn't say
you can't grow up in the South and not.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we didn't necessarily grow up in church. We went to different churches, and we knew who the Lord was. Like, prayer was a thing. Like we knew, but it wasn't until, gosh, I was a young adult that I started going to church, and it was important. I think Brandi kind of opened the door a little bit on this a few minutes ago, but it's something happens when you become a mother. Like, when you become a mom, like when you have like unprocessed trauma, or even things like, sometimes I'll have these aha moments of something that happened, and I'm like, wow, like I forgot that happened, or I never even knew it. Or she'll say something, and I'm like, whoa, like it's almost like we've blocked it out. So as I became a mother, I can only speak from my angle, but I know Brandi feels the same way. Like, you start seeing things differently, like from the other point of view. And that's when I just felt like my healing journey and my like journey with the Lord began to really take off, is when I became a mom. Because I could see at that point how I wanted to be, how I didn't want to be, what I wanted to instill in my children that I felt like wasn't instilled in me. And just to really, I just desired that closeness to the Lord. So I was young, and then it's been a journey, I mean, it's really hard. And actually, right before you asked me this question, I think this goes hand in hand. Like, I think just being intentional with understanding that, like, adversity and obstacles really do shape us. And sometimes when we're in the heat, we're in a valley, it's so easy just to like pray, like, God, get me out of this, to like let this get behind me. And I think for me, my relationship strengthened with the Lord when I began to say, like, what are you trying to teach me through this? Like, what can I learn through this? How can I become better? Like, I know that I'm not walking through this terribly hurtful time for it to be in vain. Like, how can I honor you? And those prayers just begin to be like my daily mantras. And there's been a lot of adversity over the years, but through everything I went through, I can look back and for sure say, like, had it not been through that valley, I could have never reached the next mountaintop. And so, I don't know if that answers your question fully, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah. And, God does in those, sometimes he allows those to refine us, those trials, those tribulations, the things we go through. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I'm going to, just like the Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness, God leads us through those things because there's something that needs to be shaken off of us. There's old mindsets, there's insecurities, there's unbelief, there's things that maybe there's unforgiveness and anger and bitterness that he's like, we're gonna have to shave this off, and the only way to do it is to take Elicia and Brandi and Michelle. We got to take them through this little thing so that they go through the fire, they're refined in that process. This little piece is going to be shaved off. I say all the time, like, God has to use sandpaper on me because I got some rough edges around here. People will look at you and go, oh, Alicia's perfect, but they don't know, they're just looking at what we show them sometimes. And, I know the real me. I know the little places in me that need a little sandpaper, and God will take me through those things so that it smooths those rough edges off just a little bit. And I love what you said. God, what are you teaching me through this? What can I learn? And the other thing I like to pray when I go through there is, God, who can I impact along the way?
Right.
Like, who do you have on my path? You know, you're taking me down this path I don't like, but who's on that path that maybe I need to speak into, or that needs to speak into me? Give me open ears to hear them, but give me open eyes to see them. And so, you know, I love that you shared that. You know, Brandi, for you, just the everything that you went through and how God's led you, what was your defining moment of faith?
Well, touching kind of on what Elicia said, growing up, we knew who Jesus was. We went to church. We were with Nana and Grandpa. But also, I had a rocky relationship and beliefs, because it was 1 month we had to be at church on Sunday morning, we had to be at church on Sunday night, we had to be there Wednesday night if they had anything else going on. And then for a year, we didn't step foot in church. And then all of a sudden, it was, now we have to go. And here I am at 13, 14, 15 years old, and Mama says, well, you can't go spend the night with your friends because we have church in the morning. And I'm just like, where did this come from all of a sudden? So it was back and forth a lot. And so I had a lot of big feelings about that. So it took me a little while, and I think she said it as a young adult. When I went through everything I went through with my addiction, I think when it happened to me was the day I stepped foot in rehab. I had a lot of stuff happen to me way prior to that, some very traumatic things. And I will never forget, I thought my life was over stepping into rehab. I had to be there for a year. My children weren't with me. I was just walking into this strange place with all these strangers, and I had no clue what my future was going to look like, because I literally walked into rehab with the clothes that I had, and that was it. So yes, I'm going to be in this rehab for a year, but what is going to happen after this? And so you can't worry about that to a degree. Everybody kept saying, Brandi, it's all going to work out. Anyway, I was absolutely terrified walking into rehab. And I will never forget, you go in and you meet all these people and you do all the things the first day that you're there, and they take you to your room, and then you're just there and you're in a strange place. And I will never forget laying in that bed that night. I had not prayed in a very long time. This was 5 years of me being in a really, really dark place. And it was all over me when I lay down in that bed that night, and I cried harder than I have ever cried in my life. And I prayed so hard that night. And I woke up the next morning, and it was just like, you got this. This is what we have to do. We're going to walk through this. You do whatever you got to do, and you get your babies back. And, you know, but that was my moment, was that night laying in the bed at rehab for the first time.
How old were your babies at that time?
Oh, man. Layla was almost 2. She's the baby. And they are all almost 2 years apart. So we are talking 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah.
Yeah. And I know this because I met you around that time, but at that moment, I know you got a phone call about the kids. Talk about that real quick.
Yeah. Wildly, I didn't get a phone call. We were both in a really small town, and, you know, word travels fast. So I just ended up at her house. I don't even know if she knew that, because there was a lot of chaos that day.
No, I didn't.
But without anyone saying anything, like, you just had perfect clarity as to what was happening in the moment. I was in the dark a little bit because I didn't know. Brandi and I had actually been really close for a season before that, and then she was in a really dark place and we weren't speaking. And so it wasn't like, I didn't even call her when I went to her house that day. I just went, and it was kind of a whirlwind, honestly. I don't remember. I just remember.
Well, and maybe to back up just a little bit, looking on the the outside now, because when you're in it, and you're not looking on the outside and how it affects everybody around you. But like she said, we were in a very small town, and all she heard was there was a 26-year-old female deceased at this address.
And they actually said the name of your road and not the address, but the minute that the guy came in our store and told me that there was someone deceased and that the coroner was there, I knew that it was her house. And I got straight in my car and went there.
And she had no way to not know it wasn't me. She had no way to know that my best friend had stayed with me that night. So I can't imagine what was going through her head in that moment, thinking she's fixing to show up to a house and her sister was dead.
Yeah, I did think that it was her. And because we live in such a small town, everyone knew us as we, ran the restaurants or whatever. One of the officers knew me personally, and I literally said, like, what is her name? And he didn't say the name, but I was like, is it you had worked at the store for a while, so they knew her. Yeah. And he said, it's not your sister. And so there was relief, but then again, I didn't know who had passed that day. So I didn't get a call. I think I just went with the children. And we had to just, kind of jump through some hoops that day. It was, gosh, that's a lot of feelings because, like, you don't know what to do. You're not prepared for a situation like that. And it was hard. Like she said, her going into rehab, there was no communication between her and I. And then her babies came with me, which was a whole process. We weren't on speaking terms in a good place. It goes back to like that rock bottom place. That place is in that moment we were all doing whatever we had to do to make, the kids weren't going anywhere else. I was going to make sure they were well and okay and with me and together. I didn't want them split up. But Brandi wasn't happy with me. Like, she was mad. And it took time, because then there's that flash that rises up. Like, how can you be mad? And we're both feeling some type of way. But to this day, and you may not even know this, I have letters you wrote me. I still have the letters you wrote me. It took her a while.
I was never angry.
I felt like she was, but again, that could have been just my flesh feeling like, why did you do this? And, we all say we're not judgmental. I mean, you talked about this the other day about another subject, but I mean, when you get to certain situations, you are,
Yeah. I was very selfish in that time in my life. I mean, there's anybody that goes through that is a completely selfish person in that moment. They just are. And I can own that. I was completely selfish. I lied and I did whatever I had to do to do what I was doing in that moment. But I was never angry at you. I was never angry at you. I was really angry at myself.
Right.
I was angry at the situation.
Yeah.
Because, not to veer off of what we're talking about, but I have questioned from that moment why that wasn't me in that floor. And why it was my best friend. And I had a lot of, I guess you could call it survivor's guilt or something. I don't really know what that is. But, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Brandi, it wasn't you for a reason. You are still here for a reason. And then a lot of my guilt and shame came from what I did to them and how I made them feel just in that moment. And even sitting here right now, her thinking I was angry at her breaks my heart, because I wasn't angry at you. I was just an angry person. I was a completely lost soul, and it's completely selfish. I didn't care what I was putting people through.
Well, and honestly, hearing you say it from that angle, because we haven't talked about this clearly, I can see it being selfish on both parts, because I can see where we could have made it very much about us. Like, thinking back as she's talking, I'm remembering months and years prior to that, like, actually coming here to this town, knocking on doors, like, trying to find my sister and making sure she was alive, and, literally, like, chasing her and staying up all night long wondering, like, am I going to be the one that gets a call that she's no longer with us? And so when it led up to that, it felt like a big peak, which it was. It certainly was. Praise, I mean, God, I'm so grateful she's here beside me today. But, like, that day, there is a lot of just, like, anger and selfishness that rises up. Like, why did it have to get to this point? Like, what is going on? There's just a lot of unknown. And when you don't live Brandi and I talked about this a day or two as we didn't plan or prepare for what we would speak on today.
Yeah.
We had no clue. So what are we saying?
Even 5 minutes before we start press
No
record.
idea. Right. But just really thinking about like how much we have to share, even as we venture into our new podcast. Even though she's walked through so many things that I haven't, and the other way around, we each see the other one. Like, we each see the situation from the other point of view as well.
Yeah.
So there's always that person that's like in the addiction, and then there's the parents that are dealing with the child, however old the child is, and there's the best friends, and there's the siblings. Like, everyone has a different point of view around it. I mean, if we could go to just a whole different subject, but it's still in the same like idea, me going through a horrible marriage and coming out of that. Like, when I think back to coming out of that marriage that day, the day that he was arrested and I left, like, she was my person. She was the one there on a holiday that got me an attorney immediately. Like, I was in the middle of it at that point, and she was great. I wasn't in the middle of addiction I was on the outside, but she was the one there that was like my person. She was the one that made the phone calls and lined things up and got the ball rolling, and had things not happened so promptly the way that they did, it could have looked very differently for us. And so that's a different subject within the same time, because where I was on the outside looking in, she had her times to be on the outside and look into things that I walked through as well.
Yeah. And, just how God brings full circle, and gives both of you what you need to support the other one. The wisdom and the ability, and the people you knew, the officer you knew, the lawyer you knew. He puts us in those places so that we can fill in that gap for each other. And like you said, the emotions you had when she was going through the addiction, and the emotions you did, the enemy is going to use all of that to put that wall that you mentioned, and there could be a wall, like, even from your childhood and what different things you go through happens. The enemy will use those things and put another layer, and he puts another layer, and he puts another brick, and he puts another wall, until there's this great chasm. And it takes God tearing those down brick by brick. And even personally, like, you deal with your insecurities and your things that you've dealt with, the way you feel, the guilt, the shame. The enemy will use those, and he stacks bricks up for you against God, your relationship with God. And it takes surrender, it takes prayer, it takes getting in the Word for you to allow God to take those bricks down piece by piece. And the same with you. Everything you've been through, there's been those things. The enemies talk to you, and it takes prayer and surrender and getting in the Word and allowing God to remove those bricks. And so, I've watched both of you. I've had a great front row seat to watch both of your lives and see where God has taken you. And even, watching you through the health coaching, like, I've had a front row seat to watch your transformation. Like you said, it's not the weight. It's not the physical weight.
Right.
It's the other things that I've seen you grow in. Your confidence and your self-confidence and all of those things. Like, God, he uses different things in our life to bring us to that place. And so he's giving you a platform, not to lift yourselves up, but to lift him up in what he's done through your life, so that you can impact other people. And so I see that, and I'm excited for where God's taken both of you through this podcast, because you'll be able to speak into so many people's lives and encourage them along the way. There was one thing I one other thing I was thinking of.
Well, I'll say this maybe
Okay.
while you're remembering.
Yeah.
We think about it's easy to say this about someone else. Like when you're looking from the outside, you can see like this person is, paralyzed in fear, or there's so much chaos in their life, or there's a lack of peace or confusion, whatever it may be. And all of those words come from the pits of hell, but we don't realize it when it actually has like a hold on us. So I've just seen, like, even with me, I can look back over years and just watch everything, just like the stepping stones to lead me to where I am today. And I can only like praise God right now where I'll be in 7 years from now, because he just never stops working. But with Brandi specifically, like her being so fearful of so much, and I mean, I was too. I've written all kinds of stuff about fear because it had me bound in lots of ways. But Brandi, being fearful, like it is, you're in a jail. Like you can't move past it. You can never, step into your full calling and your purpose of life. Like, and then on top of that, add a layer of confusion and a lack of peace. Like all of that, just like you said, it's just those layers, and you can't see past it. I can't tell you how many times she would tell me, like, I don't know what it is. Like, I just can't get past it. And for years I've told her, like, you have a testimony that's meant to be shared. Like, it's meant to be shared. And she always knew it. She always knew it. She just couldn't find the courage to do it. And so it was like she said, whatever broke off of her that day, that drive to Georgia, things changed. Because I can tell you, I was supposed to go live with her, and she was terrified. But then when she got back, the next message is I just went live. Like, she didn't even ask me. And so, like, we literally have to surrender those parts and just lay them at the feet of Jesus. And that's literally what he's waiting on us to do. Mm-hmm. We know it's easier said than done. And sometimes it takes, the Lord putting us in an awkward position to make us just be still. Yeah. Because you would have never been quiet and done that drive alone if you could have chosen.
No.
And look at the shifts. I mean, it's been pretty radical, Brandi.
It's been wild. The last 8 weeks alone, it really has. And I mean, everything fell into place the way that it should have, because obviously you don't know when a baby's going to be born. And so that's what I was waiting on, was just the phone call. And it was 2 weeks early. He was due November the 5th, and he was born early. And then he does not like me to drive, period, much less drive a 10.5-hour drive alone. And so he was doing everything he could to try to work things out with work, so I didn't have to go alone and do all the things. And it just didn't end up working out. And then there I was alone for 10.5 hours, and just 30 minutes into the drive, a song came on, and it hit me so hard, and I was just bawling my eyes out. And
what was the song?
Past Yesterday by Jelly Roll. If you've never heard it, it's powerful. It's powerful.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yes, it is powerful, and it from the moment the song starts, it is me and my childhood and the way things started for me to take me down the road that I went, and and I just bawled my eyes out. The next song that came on was Fight Song. Mm-hmm. And that is like my life motto. When I spoke at the place with Michelle Harris, I actually played a video there for the girls at the home that I spoke at, and Fight Song was playing in the background of that. And that's been, has that been 5-6 years ago, I think. And I mean, to this day, that song is just really, anyway. So Past Yesterday came on. Right after that, Fight Song came on. I already was bawling my eyes out. It was all a God thing. I mean, it 100% was. And then right after that, Hero by Mariah Carey came on. And it's wild because that song is really old, and I think a lot of people don't really listen to the meaning of Hero by Mariah Carey, because she's talking about herself. And I'll be honest, like, I don't think that I ever listened to that song the way that I did. It just put things in line for me. Mm-hmm. And when Hero by Mariah Carey came on, I mean, for probably 2 hours, I just listened to those songs over and over, and whatever was going through my head was coming out of my eyes. And it was, after that drive, I told Lulu, actually, and it was crazy because I wasn't supposed to be taking you to the airport. On my way back, the way things happened with her and I while I was here with the baby, that Sunday, she was getting up. Gracie was taking her to the airport, to meet a friend in LaGrange to go to the airport. But I was headed back to Virginia that morning, and I just was sitting there that night. I was like, Lulu, why don't I just take you to LaGrange on my way to Virginia, and her and I had such a breakthrough in that 45-minute drive. But none of that would have happened if things didn't happen exactly the way they did from the moment Sydney called me to say the baby's about to be born.
Yeah.
None of that would happen.
Yeah.
It's just
That's so
wild.
good. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And, God uses music in powerful ways, to break those things off of you and really set the tone, for what He wants to do in your life.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Hope, Health, and Healing. I know that Brandi and Elicia's story has inspired and encouraged you today. Join us in episode 31 as we continue this interview with Elicia and Brandi in part 2 of their story. In that episode, Elicia talks about peace and surrendering your life to Jesus. Thank you for tuning in today. Please like and comment on our podcast and share with your friends and family. We will see you next time. Thanks.